we're going to talk about fishing at Nags Head, North Carolina. This is the Outer Banks. We're just about 100 yards south of the Outer Banks Pier. And for surf fishing here, you don't need a big fancy pole like that one, which I've got lots of. What you need is a ultralight tackle, like my grandson's pole here. These are about $20. And you need a bottom rig with 2 hooks and a 2-ounce weight on the end. Now you get these bottom rigs right there at the Outer Banks Pier. Now the bait is really important. You're going to need bloodworms. And bloodworms are expensive, but you cut them up into 1-inch pieces, and one worm you can catch 10 fish on. So let's bait it up. I've got 2 pieces of bloodworm. Now ordinary worms don't work because they're not tough enough. They'll come off the hook. You need a small hook with a fairly long shank. And these bottom rigs have little beads and stuff that attract the fish. You don't have to have those, but bottom rigs around here mostly do. So we bait them up just like that, and we're going to go throw it out and catch another fish. Now, this is a small shore break. You just want to be just outside the shore break, not very far. We're going to throw it out and leave the bait. If nothing hits it within 2 minutes, slowly reel it in. Lots of times you'll catch something when you're reeling it in. Our family's been fishing the Outer Banks. Well, I've been coming 45 years. Never missed a day of catching fish. And we'll talk about some simple techniques to catch them. This is a spot, which lots of times you catch those 2 at a time, on bloodworms. This is another fishing pole called the Ladyfish. It's about $15 at Kmart.
Probably the best one.
What do you say?
It's probably the best one for catching the little fish out here in the Outer Banks.
And so if you're not embarrassed to fish with a pink fishing pole, you will catch more fish than anybody else. We use a 1-ounce weight on that. And in big surf, that bait will move a little too much, so you may want to put 2 ounces on it. But we catch fish when nobody else is catching fish, using ultralight tackle, fish in close. So once you throw it out there, let it sit for a couple minutes, and if there's no strikes, just slowly reel it in, and you'd be surprised how many times you catch a fish literally at the very, very edge of the water, just as the water's breaking. If you get into this white stuff, then there's no fish. The other good thing about fishing with this cheap tackle is the salt water really corrodes the reels, and so they're just good for, well, usually about 2 years. We rinse them off well, but they don't last very long, especially when you're catching dozens and dozens of fish in salt water. There's other baits you can use. You can use squid that you cut up in little strips. That's very inexpensive. A lot of people fish with frozen shrimp, but nothing catches fish like a bloodworm. They're about $9 for a bag of 10, so just under $1 a piece. But when you cut them up in little pieces, and they're big worms, typically they're 8 or 10 inches long, you can catch a lot of fish on one worm. Keep them cold. We always put them on ice when we're out here to keep them cold, and then stick them in the refrigerator. A bag of worms will last us 3 or 4 days, and we'll literally catch more than 100 surf fish, little fish, 1-pounders or so using that bag of worms. It's the most fun you can have for $9. Here's what a bag of bloodworms looks like. It's a plastic bag. It's got some seaweed and some kind of mud from the mud flats where they're caught. These are not local. They're imported from New England. They're the best bait here on the Outer Banks. So we always freeze a couple bottles of water, ice, stick our bait in a plastic bag, and keep them chilled, and they'll last all week. You don't need a lot of fancy tackle. I do find you need a bucket is very helpful. Put your worms and a bottle of water in, and one of these sand spikes to hold your pole is very, very handy. As far as the pole goes, small rod, cheap. You can use for a year or two and then throw it away and get another one. So here's a bloodworm. It's a nice big juicy one. We're going to cut it up in short sections and see how many fish we can catch on one bloodworm. So I'm going to put that in the bucket and cut it up. A fish knife is handy for that. And so you just got to cut this up into 1-inch sections. And then we're going to bait the hook and catch it. This is a sea mullet or a kingfish, depending on what you want to call it. And there's a lot of those. They're in real close, right in the surf. And he ate my worm, so we're going to have to rebait. Okay. One thing to remember, you do need a fishing license if you're over 16 years of age. Go, just get it online. Children do not need a license, but the adults will. It's cheap. It's $10 for a week's license or $30 for a whole year. Get it online, print it up before you come to the Outer Banks is the easiest way, or go to any of the fishing shops with your driver's license and they'll get it for you.